Lake Malawi has seen fluctuations in water level for tectonic reasons, for long-term global climate change, long before climate change became human-induced, from land use changes in the catchment. And nobody knows what will happen in the future. So we're looking at natural cycles, but also long-term trends. This has a direct bearing on river flows, water quality. There are issues relating to erosion that are taking place and other things which I'll show you in slides later. This is the pattern of water levels in Lake Malawi from the point where records began in about 1890 through to the present day. And you can see that in the early part of the last century, the lake level was significantly lower by some 10 meters than its present level. Malawi depends entirely on its power production from hydropower, and this is the optimum power output when the lake level is set at 475 or thereabouts meters. And a barrage was built in the 1960s for that purpose, to help to regulate the lake. But when lake level falls, power reduction drops, and we've had two periods since the barrage was introduced when water levels have dropped dramatically and power production for the country has dropped. If, however, there were to be a return to the conditions of the last century, the Shire River would cease to flow. That situation existed between about 1905 and 1930, and it caused major problems then. What it would cause now, in terms of a population which is 12, 13 million higher, hardly beggars belief. The problem is that all of that water is fed through the system through these hydropower plants. They have been poorly maintained. There are a whole lot of issues that are attached both to climate change but also other forms of variability. Typical view within Cholo district of the level of bare earth that is now exposed just by the density of population and cultivation. And Barry on the panel here could tell you much more about these issues of soil erosion as contributing to flashiness of flooding that takes place and also siltation of the river system. This is floating vegetation moving down the Shire, which gets into the power station, blocks the turbines, is being stimulated by rising temperature in the system. Again, a number of examples of things that are being done to try and control weed growth, and I'm jumping right through those. Water supply is directly affected by the amount of water in the river. Blantyre, the second largest city in Malawi, depends entirely on this one source at the present time for water supply. The pattern of floods and disasters in Malawi is prompted partly by the seasonal movement of the main intercontinental orographic rain systems, but also by Mulanje Mountain. When you get normal conditions, the river is crystal clear. When you have it in flood, that's the consequence of the silt being carried downstream. The issue for the future, under the changing climate, in the lower Shire, temperature may well increase by another 4 to 5 degrees above the present level, which is already at 38 to 40 in midsummer. Major issues for conditions there, including some of the issues of disease that we've heard earlier. And a graph produced from another study showing some of the changes that are occurring over time and the increased frequency of disasters that are taking place. I'm going to jump through most of these, other than to point out that this slide is where the Shire has been breached. It's actually gone through a different channel, as a result of which, instead of using the railway, which ceased to operate in the 1980s, this is how the entire community now has to operate. This is the condition of current roads in that area. A major new development by the government of an inland port, which raises all sorts of questions about the availability of water supply, condition of the Zambezi, and so on. So, in the SEA, what we're trying to do is to pick up some of the direct effects of climate change in terms of temperature, the hydrological cycle, frequency of flooding, and so on. Some of the indirect issues which then feed on into irrigation, agriculture, fishing, soil, and so on. But what I'd like to just leave you with is this final concluding slide, which says that one of the ways that SEA can help the process of looking at climate change adaptation is by differentiating between the natural cycles that occur and induced effects which climate change is introducing, looking at those critical thresholds for decision making, like the issue of river flow, building a better understanding of the environmental dynamics, environment is never static, and promoting coordinated approaches in place of ad hoc solution. Those are the key messages that we will be taking back to ministers in the hope that we can end up with a final process which is taking the drivers for change, the pressures on the environment, the state of the environment, very similar to some of the matrices you've seen already, and basically trying to deal with it under three headings: land and water resource, natural resource management, water management, and human resource management, those three key areas. Thank you very much.